All right. So next up, we're going to talk about how to keep DE&I in mind when looking at ways to actually earn revenue for your organization. So I welcome Marietta Hannigan, EVP and Chief Strategy, Corporate Development and Communications Officer at the recently rebranded Jacobs, as she shares best practices for communicating successful DEI initiatives to attract customers and improve brand awareness and reputation. Marietta, over to you.
All right. Thanks, Amanda. I do have to say that 5 years ago, I could not have imagined we'd be talking about tying inclusion and diversity to market share. In fact, I was thinking about this last night, and I thought some of my professors, my early bosses, which again has been eons ago, are probably rolling over in their graves. They're thinking, seriously, putting a value on fluffy things like that, please. But we should. And all of our stakeholders are truly benefiting it, our employees, our clients, our communities, and our shareholders. So I was really excited when I was asked to speak on the 4 elements that support gaining market share, starting with building trust with those constituencies, developing authentic partnerships that stand up to scrutiny and delivered results, cultivating and leveraging strong collaboration and ownership between the communications folks and our I&D teams, and last, ensuring that the culture you're building around your people actually translates to a meaningful impact on your bottom line. To remain competitive and successful, all of these elements are critical. So as I look at it, in the past, companies were typically valued on cost, service, or quality, but that's no longer the case. Customers are changing. They're much more conscious of what a company stands for, what their purpose is, their culture, and how they're responding or stepping up around current issues, things that used to be taboo, like inclusion, social justice, sustainability, or climate change. And that purpose must not only resonate with customers, but it also has to hold up to scrutiny. We have to be accountable for the commitments we make around those things, and then openly share progress and results externally. And this is never truer than the commitments you make around, again, inclusion and diversity. That transparency, I think, really creates the platform for building and sustaining that trust with your customers and the rest of, again, of those constituencies that I mentioned. But there are a few concrete shifts we made at Jacobs to creating that transparency. One of those is leveraging the power of your people, their voices, their experiences. We implemented a strong, targeted social media strategy, which engages our people in sharing their personal stories around our company culture, their career stories, their engagement in their communities, and cool things they're doing for our clients. And as a result, our followers increased dramatically because we had more interesting things that we were talking about. Customer feedback and engagement has just been fantastic. And the added bonus has also been an improved recruitment. So we are getting more interesting folks that are coming to Jacobs and inquiring about Jacobs. The second is using our quarterly earnings calls to really reinforce a specific aspect of our culture. So as a publicly traded company, we were quite comfortable talking about our financial results. But 6 quarters ago, we made a conscious decision to lead every earnings call with the CEO, sharing an element of our culture, something that we could publicize and then again, hold ourselves to account in the coming quarters. So again, a move in demonstrating that transparency, building that trust, and really communicating that we were serious about continuously focusing on our culture and translating that culture into measurable value for our shareholders. And the third was something unexpected, and that was finding and flexing our social voice. So last summer, after the murder of George Floyd, we stepped up and spoke out on racial injustice, something we had absolutely never done before, a role we had never played. And the confidence to do that came from the strong culture we had built at Jacobs around our culture of caring and our focus on our people. Around the globe, not just here in the United States, our people were hurting. And Steve Demetrio, our chair and CEO, stepped forward with a personal message and a call to action to other CEOs to also speak out. So it was a simple, honest communication that resonated and further reinforced the bond of trust with our people and, again, our communities. And we didn't stop there. As part of our existing global inclusion and diversity strategy, which at Jacobs we call Together Beyond, we launched our global action plan for advancing justice and equality on our quarterly earnings call in August last year. which really sets out actionable initiatives, measurable objectives in the company's continuing efforts to address embedded and systemic racial inequities. So this progressive and transparent move became an element of really brand fortification, doing what we said we would do and doing what is right. But how now are we ensuring that our efforts are sustainable moving forward? Are we developing authentic and strategic partnerships in the communities where we live and work, partnerships to advance inclusion and diversity, and even spur economic development? And the answer is yes, we are. So we approach community outreach and partnerships through the lens of social equity with efficient, inclusive, sustainable type solutions. And we approach it from several angles. For example, we put a concerted effort into STEAM activities, particularly in our underserved communities, where we're trying to reach out, help shape young minds to develop an interest and to actually build skills in math, engineering, technology, science, and the arts. So these are all capabilities and skill sets that are important to the business that we're in. We're also promoting donation and volunteer opportunities with organizations committed to justice and equality through Collectively, which is Jacobs' global giving and volunteering program. So an example here is we're actually donating our expertise in water. We're very well known in the water sector, and we're donating that expertise in at-risk urban and rural communities throughout the globe. We're also working with external organizations, professional organizations, like in the case of the United States, the National Society of Black Engineers and the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials, to really provide leadership development programs to accelerate advancement for Black employees to mid and senior level leadership. So again, another element of how we're developing inclusion and really putting some weight behind it. All of these things, every one of the things I've mentioned, all feed into, again, the people-focused bottom line. So at Jacobs, we're a people business. We're selling brain power, and it's a highly competitive market for talent. That's probably our biggest issue right now, is attracting talent to keep up with the work, the volume of work that we have. So we've learned that when we put people first, not only do we have happy employees, engaged and motivated employees, but the work that they do is more innovative, more higher value, which in turn results in a high performing business. So from the beginning of 2016, when our culture and portfolio transformation really began here at Jacobs, through the end of 2020, our total shareholder return increased 170% versus the market being up 103%. So that's quite a positive gap, if you will, between the market and what we've seen. So it does translate. For many years, McKinsey has also been researching this, of what's the impact of diversity and inclusion on your performance. And last year was interesting. Their results just continue to show this. And they found that companies in the top quartile for gender diverse executive teams were 25% more likely to have above average profitability, which is up from 21% in 2017. And when you add ethnic diversity, those companies in the top quartile were 36% more likely to have above average profitability. So it does matter. Those are really strong numbers. The business case for both gender and ethnic diversity is very sound. And it's also the right thing to do. Now, an element I'll just mention here quickly is, I put the business case first, because in the past, the emphasis was always on, well, it's the right thing to do. But we were missing that link to the business imperative. And without that link, we weren't seeing, at least at Jacobs, we weren't seeing the meaningful actions and the progress. Once we married the two of those, we have really started to hit our stride in that area. So in looking back, several things stick out that continue to make a difference. First was our absolute priority never changed. The safety and well-being of our people and their families was first. And when you think about the year we've all had with the pandemic, had we not had a really strong foundation of caring for our people and years of demonstrating that commitment, we would have seen a deterioration of morale, productivity, attrition, all those things during COVID, which all affect your brand, and they certainly affect your performance. And in our case, all of those things from a positive standpoint really helped us retain our people. And again, retaining your great people equals better performance. We also learned you have to walk the talk, and that starts with leadership. So led by our CEO in 2016, he intentionally shifted our executive leadership team from all male to 60% female or ethnically diverse, while increasing the overall diversity of the Jacobs Board of Directors to 55% female and ethnically diverse. That was a huge game changer for us, and it really set the course. So looking ahead, our aspirational goal is to create a 40-40-20 gender balanced workforce around the globe. 40% women, 40% men, and 20% open to any gender over the next 5 years. So we put a benchmark out there, something that we have to hit. Something that we believe is different from other companies, another element is we take a very broad view of inclusion. And an element that has had a really big impact for us is the emphasis on positive mental health as a part of our inclusive culture. So this naturally was tested during COVID. We have almost 2,000 positive mental health champions here at the company, in the organization. So we leverage those mental health champions to assist employees with COVID-19 related mental health concerns. We launched a Mental Health Matters Resiliency Program. So it featured videos and live webinars on topics like relaxation, coping mechanisms, healthy eating, physical well-being, and we extended those resources also to our clients. So another way to get your customers involved in the culture that you're setting. So to close it out, I'll share some best practices around I&D, including the partnership with communication. So first is you've got to make real commitments on inclusion and diversity that are very specific and authentic to your organization. And you have to publicize those commitments so that you drive real accountability. Second is fully integrate accountability for inclusion within the organization rather than assigning it to a separate I&D group. You might have a leader for your I&D strategy, but get the full organization to own it top to bottom. It's not somebody else's issue or challenge or initiative, it's all of ours. And the third one, and which I really do think is kind of a common denominator across our success, is the immersion and integration of our communications team alongside the rest of the organization to capture and share the proof points from all the efforts that we have underway. So they became the storytellers, both internally and externally, of the successes that we were having. Fourth, create opportunities internally for your people to engage in honest and meaningful dialogue around I&D, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Don't sugarcoat anything. You got to get it out there and communicate and talk about it if in fact you're going to solve it. And then report progress against the commitments that you put out there authentically through the stories of your people. There's not a better mouthpiece, if you will, than people sharing their stories, because their credibility is really high. And then celebrate your successes. But there's a but here. Accept the fact that the work in this area is never finished. Be careful of what we call a victory lap, because new facets are going to unfold every day. You got to understand them, you got to embrace them, and then you got to go slay them. So that's my discussion, and I would love to entertain questions or hear your thoughts.
I think we've got time for one quick question here. When you mentioned, the role that communicators need to play in, in this role of and everything, what kind of best practices can you give, for other organizations, for communicators in other organizations to be able to, work hand in hand with the DE&I teams to be able to, put those, those practices and those stories to play?
Yeah, well, again, I think it starts with partnership. So you've got to try to, first of all, break down the wall between where might be considered two separate elements of an organization. So you really have to get them working together. So we embedded, as an example, we've got a communications director that is embedded within our Together Beyond strategy team. So there's somebody there side by side. Plus, across the organization, around the globe, our communications team sits in those operations. So they are a part of those communities, a part of those groups, whether it be sales, whether it be operations, et cetera. So again, it's very well integrated in terms of that. And then I think, once you get that, then it's about getting those stories out in a timely manner and pulling them out and then sharing them and making sure that people see the quick wins, the big wins, the small wins, but the stories that are out there in your organization. And then again, you should put that out again externally through social media and other mechanisms.
How are you sharing those stories internally, through intranet, through like internal newsletters? What?
All of the above. So we have an intranet, we have a weekly This Week at Jacobs that goes out. So key nuggets of the stories are there, and then we feed those also into the intranet, which is called Jacobs Connect. Again, our employees are engaged on social media as employees, so they get a lot of their company information through social media as well. So we do that. We have local newsletters, in the different elements of the organization. So all of the above. I mean, we're always looking for ways to get out there.
Awesome. And you guys have done such a fantastic job in just a short period of time in terms of changing the diversity of your work, your leadership teams and everything. It's just fantastic. And I mean, something to definitely strive for. So,
but we're not finished.
But no, I don't think everybody's ever going to be done, right?
Right.
Had one other question that came in. It's like, when looking at social media, what social media are you using? Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter,
all
TikTok?
We haven't used TikTok yet. We're talking about that, but all of those, Instagram, YouTube, all of the above.
Okay. Have you found one to work better than another?
Well, I would say, well, it's interesting because I think our segments of the population use different ones. I'd say we probably have the most traction on LinkedIn. We've got over 1 million followers. And so we're getting really good traction there. But when you start subdividing, the target audience, a lot of others are on Twitter. So they're using and getting it from there. But I'd say if I had to pick one, I'd say LinkedIn has probably given us the best exposure.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, we're kind of at time right now, Marietta. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us.